Rolling in 3, 2, 1.
And we're back with another bonus episode of the D3 Datacast. It's regional ranking season, so we're very busy, Matt, putting out not only our weekly episode, but it's time to review and react. Hot off the press, we have week 2 regional rankings. Let's dive right in, Matt. Region 1. Here we go with the actual committee rankings, Matt. It was Trinity, followed by Tufts, Williams, and then Connecticut College, St. Joseph, Connecticut, Albertus Magnus, and Morrisville State. Matt, we talked about in the preview episode, the predictions episode, that trio of St. Joseph, Connecticut, Albertus Magnus, and Conn College being very close. It looks like we were correct. We slotted those three correctly. They just happened to be in a little bit of a different order than what we expected.
And we brought up a slide. We did a 3-team comparison between these. They didn't all play head-to-heads, but we noted a kind of interaction between Albertus Magnus had beaten Connecticut College and St. Joseph had beaten Albertus Magnus. So we kind of stacked them in that order. Looked like the committee did not take that into maybe much of a factor. They probably did look at it. They ended up with Connecticut College fourth, kind of a quartet of NESCACs at the top, and then the 2 GNAC teams. So it was something we discussed. We just got a little different order than the committee did here in Region 1 in the middle.
All right, Region 2, Matt, this was a perfect region for us. This one was, I think we talked about it, slotting pretty nicely. Keene State, followed by Nichols, Clark, third, WPI, fourth, and just the last 2 spots, just 6th ranked in Region 2, go to Western New England and Brandeis.
Yeah, this one we thought was fairly straightforward. It turned out it was. We ended up predicting this correctly, and I think this was an easy one, so not too much credit for us D3 Datacast guys. I think this was an easy one to get.
All right, Region 3 was pretty straightforward as well. We have Oswego State, followed by Hobart, RPI, St. Lawrence. Matt, we weren't sure what would happen with Farmingdale, given the type of resume they have. We had them ahead of Utica, and in the actual rankings we saw just a few minutes ago, they're flipped. Utica is 5th, Farmingdale State 6th, with Nazareth rounding out Region 3.
Yeah, in our conversations, our fear was almost Farmingdale could slide all the way out and maybe you see SUNY New Paltz come in. That wasn't the case. They just fell one spot from where we had them. We thought maybe the Skyline Farmingdale team would separate the Liberty League trio from the 2 Empire 8 teams that you see. That wasn't the case. Utica came in and then Farmingdale slid one spot down. Kind of makes sense. They have the lowest strength of schedule there kind of on the screen and no results versus regionally ranked, so pushing them down a spot. I'd be interesting to see what was the discussion splitting hairs behind Utica but not Nazareth, but it's a little bit in the weeds for this discussion right now.
Number 1 in Region 4 is NYU, just like we thought, followed by Rowan and DeSales. In the actual rankings, Matt, we have Stockton 4th, Ramapo 5th, Stevens 6th, and TCNJ 7th. So another trio here. We got a little bit mixed up compared to how the committee ranked them. Although in terms of being 4 through 6, it just turned out to be a little bit of a different order there between Stevens, Stockton, and Ramapo.
Yeah, this was one we weren't exactly sure how the committee this week would assess quality of regionally ranked wins. Stockton and Ramapo at 4 ranked wins. And kind of the 500 or better record is above Stevens for sure in that category. They also have better quality of regionally ranked wins than Stevens does. They've beaten, especially Stockton has beaten Keene State, Rowan. They're like 1 and 2 in their region. Ramapo has a win over Rowan. They look like a number 2 in the region. So this is an indication that even though we didn't have a ranked order last week, maybe the committee was able to dive into those regionally ranked wins, look at kind of a resume profile of those teams and determine that there was a higher quality there. That's when we weren't quite sure of. So we went to Stevens, kind of maybe more assuming that all ranked wins or ranked games were a little bit even this week since the list was alphabetical last week. This is maybe one indication, and I think we'll have one later, that was maybe not the case. They were able to assess quality of regionally ranked wins, which also leads me to believe, then why couldn't we just have had an order last week if we know what the quality is?
Let's move on to Region 5, where we have Widener at the top, followed by Catholic and Hood. Matt, we have a flip here from our projections. It's Johns Hopkins in the 4 spot, followed by Eastern, and then another flip from what we thought might happen with Franklin and Marshall 6th and Gettysburg 7th.
Yeah, that one was really interesting. Not exactly sure why the flip. Overall quality of ranked wins would favor Gettysburg, but we noted the head-to-head between those two teams was Franklin and Marshall. This was something we talked a lot about in our episode. So maybe it does appear the committee compared Johns Hopkins and Eastern together, and then maybe didn't compare Gettysburg and Franklin and Marshall with Johns Hopkins. Um, I'd have to think about that some more if that makes sense to me or not.
Yeah,
For
I
us
think
in our episode, it didn't, but you could maybe see that there's a winning percentage and a strength of schedule gap there. So maybe that was enough to determine a difference between just calling a separation from Johns Hopkins to the other two Centennial Conference teams and then just comparing those two together, in which case then you do get the head to head really weighing in heavily there.
and we talked about that with the sweep of Gettysburg by Johns Hopkins. We thought that it may not come down to a direct comparison between
Yeah.
them, and I think with Eastern being slotted in between, that's confirmation that's probably the way it played out. And then if you get down to a direct comparison between Gettysburg and Franklin and Marshall, you can see Gettysburg being ahead clearly, clearly there because Franklin and Marshall being ahead of Gettysburg because of the season sweep.
Yeah.
So
2
I
and 0
think
head
that
to head.
exactly. All right, Matt, Region 6. This was another one that we were interested in seeing how it would how it would play out at the top. Very very strong resumes, like build a bracket around them type resumes for both Randolph-Macon and Hampton-Sydney. We thought maybe Randolph-Macon had enough to take the top spot. The committee gives it to Hampton-Sydney, Matt, and as I look at it, I mean, you're splitting hairs. I think maybe you could look at this as another place where Hampton-Sydney gets a slight advantage based on the quality of regionally ranked wins. I don't know. You could probably have that discussion. Hampton-Sydney gets the top spot in Region 6 this week, followed by Randolph-Macon. Guilford is indeed third, followed by Virginia Wesleyan, Christopher Newport, Emory, and Roanoke, exactly how we saw it playing out.
Yeah, and this was at the top. Randolph-Macon and Hampton-Sydney. We called it out as basically a toss-up. Looking at the top 16 picture, this is something we talked about on the episode this week. We're probably fighting for maybe the top two spots here. So Hampton-Sydney does stay on top. You can definitely understand that above a 90% winning percentage, a strength of schedule basically at 600, 6 regionally ranked wins against a bunch of number ones and number twos in the region. That's a good pick. And Randolph-Macon's still like a top 4 team nationally right behind them. And then the rest of the region, stacking up the way we thought it would. Ended up being surprisingly straightforward after the alphabetical was maybe a little bit more of a question mark for us. This one ended up being straightforward down the list there once you got, 2 through 7, 3 through 7.
And speaking of straightforward down the list, Matt, Region 7, exactly as we saw it. Good job, team, defending home turf, going 100% in Region 7. Have to feel good about that.
Yeah, I think even though we got this right, the most interesting thing is now Mount Union is maybe very, very shaky ground for Pool C right now. Getting behind Carnegie Mellon, I would have to say Carnegie Mellon is not super competitive for Pool C. That means Mount Union is behind them. Also, take a look at their regionally ranked wins, St. John's and Marietta. Marietta's not on this list. They're going to lose a regionally ranked win there. Mount Union has felt like a team that's been solid all year long, and maybe now we're kind of right at the end, we're seeing maybe that's not quite the case. The other concerning thing is Carnegie Mellon now breathing down Calvin's neck fourth? Would that put, does Calvin have maybe less wiggle room than we thought they did? Are they going to get passed by Carnegie Mellon, who would just block them on the Pool C table? I think that's a dangerous thing when you have such high strength of schedule teams in your region that are getting ranked, even though that their winning percentage is kind of questionable for a Pool C type of a setting.
Worries for another day, Matthew. All right, Region 8. All right, this is where some of the carnage comes in, Matt. We enjoyed some success in the previous regions here. Another kind of coin flip I think we talked about. I see this as a win for, yes, that feels like the way things should be.
Yeah.
With Illinois Wesleyan having the head-to-head win over Wash U. They do, in fact, come out as the number 1 team in Region 8 in these rankings, followed by Wash U, Elmhurst third, University of Chicago, probably one of our biggest surprises here, ranked 4th, followed by Wisconsin Lutheran, Carthage, and St. Norbert, Matt. So we had Anderson in that last spot with Chicago just off the board. Here's our first just complete miss of having a team not show up in the regional rankings with Anderson. Chicago takes their spot. Also some difference in order just with the way things are, with Chicago slotting all the way up to fourth, that knocks that group of Wisconsin Lutheran, Carthage, and St. Norbert down a spot from what maybe we thought might happen.
Yeah, I think a couple interesting things here. One, Chicago has one of the few reasonable strengths of schedule on this list, even though they're below 600 on the winning percentage, and we see a lot of reasonable winning percentages on this list. They're also 3-4 versus regionally ranked. It compares favorably to this entire list. And then if we were able to kind of delve into some of that quality of regionally ranked wins, having a win over Case, a team like Wash U, those are two teams that are going to be in the top couple of spots in their regions. I guess I saw the committee kind of favoring some of that the ranked win quality over teams like St. Norbert, Anderson, Wisconsin Lutheran that does not really have ranked win quality there. So definitely something that the committee is continuing to value. We had the conversation about Chicago on the episode. I think in the end of the day, I'm not surprised to see them in the region. I just thought that they might slot in front of Anderson, not all the way up fourth in the region. So that's a big deal. It's another sign that I think this region is soft and there's not very many Pool C viable resumes, because that Chicago resume is not Pool C viable at all, not even close. I think, not even really the Elmhurst resume is. So we're maybe only talking the top two, unless Elmhurst can really build that through the CCIW tournament. But yeah, I think there were some tight orders. We had the conversation 1 and 2 on the episode, and then we had that Wisconsin Lutheran Carthage St. Norbert conversation as well. So to see them come in a slightly different order, or just slide down the list a little bit and have Chicago pop in above, maybe a surprise how far Chicago slotted in above, but that they did slot in, not a super big surprise.
On to Region 9, Platteville is the number 1 there, followed by Nebraska Wesleyan and Co. Matt, a bit of a surprise. Maybe Loris is 5th, followed by Dubuque, Bethany Lutheran, and Central. And this was the big one to me, Matt, where I thought this looks like maybe they are taking some sort of regionally ranked wins into account here, with Loris moving all the way up from where we thought they would be. Not only the 5 and 3, but wins over 2 wins over Nebraska Wesleyan, who are near the top of this region. We talked about them in number 2 this week. Wins over Dubuque, Wisconsin Lutheran. So maybe not like super high profile type teams, but you look at where they're ranked and there is some quality there.
And just the quantity, 5 wins, I think is good, especially in this region,
True.
the top number on the board. We had thought maybe that there would be a gap there with Dubuque, given the almost 40 points of strength of schedule, but I think they maybe bring that comparison onto the board. Loris does have and I'm forgetting all of the arc, kind of the mess here of who's beaten who. Loris does have a win over Dubuque, and I don't think that they've played the second time yet, if I have that correct. So maybe there's a 1-0 that maybe was also in their favor. In Region 5, we had seen maybe Johns Hopkins not be compared with the other Centennial Conference teams on the board, but they had a winning percentage and a strength of schedule kind of gap between those two. In the case of Dubuque and Loris, the winning percentages are even. There's just a strength of schedule gap. So maybe that was in total resume close enough that they wanted to compare them all at once. And then maybe there were some head-to-head things or common opponents things that stuck out to you. So getting exactly which teams are being compared together, I think, is big for this type of process to see what shakes out. And I do want to say, you did highlight Central in orange. We got Central absolutely correct here. They were 7th, and we got them right 7th. So put us on a green check mark next to Central.
There you go. That box was a little bit too big.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just interesting that Loris placed as highly as they did, because if you look at them, you've got really good winning percentages, but they stand out a little bit as an outlier on the lower end for strength of schedule.
Yeah, right.
But clearly they had enough to overcome it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm wondering maybe a little bit more was read into some of the wins than just looking at that 5 and 3 number. But
one of the few examples of us getting it wrong by being too low on a team with a lower strength of schedule, I think, is maybe only Loris that I can think of here.
Very true. All right, Matt. Region 10 was another difficult one. Trinity, Texas, and Calu are 1 and 2 as we thought. We have a flip here from what we expected. St. Thomas checks in at 3rd. Pomona Pitzer 4th. Claremont Mudscripts is 5th. Hardin-Simmons 6th. And we thought Whitworth would stay regionally ranked. We saw them last week. We thought they had an edge to get that 7th spot this week, but it's actually Redlands who enters the mix here. as the seventh ranked team in Region 10.
Yeah, this one's kind of interesting. You know, we're giving up still a lot of winning percentage, 90 points or so of winning percentage. The strength of schedule for Redlands is good, 554. It's not overwhelmingly good, but it's pretty good. But Whitworth's is 520. That's not the worst that we've ever seen, right? It's above a team like St. Thomas. Whitworth only has one regionally ranked win, but they've only played 2 games. I thought Redlands being 2-7 might hurt them a little bit more. Yeah, their strength of schedule is good. They played a lot of regionally ranked teams, but they're not winning a lot of the games. So to me, that almost stood out as a maybe we're going to discount the strength of schedule a little bit. Not that they haven't played a tough schedule, but we're not going to maybe look at quote unquote rewarding a team that has played that strong of a schedule and just not really won that many games. Again, maybe you could look at Illinois Wesleyan as a number one in their region, but golly, that's a weak number one in a region. No shots at the Titans, but like how many strong regions would they be ranked number one in? Like they would not be ranked one in a strong region. So I just didn't know that Redlands resume, under 600 winning percentage, 2-7 versus regionally ranked, that it was going to get that many benefits of the doubt. They do have a pretty good non-conference strength of schedule if we went to the secondary criteria. I understand Whitworth is not a very strong resume either, so maybe it's fine. We did call out Redlands as a possibility in the episode. I just didn't think it was that strong of a possibility.
All right, Matt, it's week 2, so we're not into the once ranked, always ranked of, week 3 and week 4. But this isn't entirely all just fun and games still at this point, Matt, because these regional rankings, and the underlying data that went into compiling them serves as the basis for what we will see later this week on a special edition of Hoopsville with the top 16 reveal, Matt, the teams that are, more or less, you could say, in line to host pending geography. And so let's do the next step here. Take what we learned and do our next set of predictions here with a top 16 reveal prediction.
Yeah, I'll run down the list. I was doing this while you were updating our slides, so we didn't get to talk about this together. We didn't do a full like process once we knew the regional rankings like the committee would. So just setting you up for us to be maybe off on a little bit of order, but I think it's going to be a solid list overall. Right at the top, we talked about these two teams, Hampton-Sydney, then Randolph-Macon. We saw Hampton-Sydney come in number 1, Randolph-Macon come in number 2 in the region. I think either way you slice it, those are probably going to be the top 2 overall teams. That's what I expect anyway. So they're right here at the top. Number 3, we went with Widener. 870 winning percentage, 607 strength of schedule, 6 regionally ranked wins. Now, the regionally ranked win quality is not great for Widener. 6 overall is good, so maybe they could slide a spot or two. I wouldn't be surprised to see John Carroll, who I have 4th, maybe jump above Widener. Maybe even Case Western, who's 8-3 versus regionally ranked opponents. But yeah, that's kind of what I have there. I think I just named off the top 5: Hampton-Sydney, then Randolph-Macon, then Widener. 4th, John Carroll. I think those are the top 4 overall seeds. 5th, I had Case Western. I wouldn't be surprised to see them slide into the top 4, like I said. 6th is NYU. Then I have Oswego State, Trinity, Texas, Trine, Trinity, Connecticut, UW-Platteville, Catholic, and then the last 4 teams in the top 16 that I have are Guilford, Cal Lutheran, Tufts, and Keene State. So couple of things I was considering down the stretch. Tufts has beaten Keene State, let's say. So that could be when you're looking at a top 16 and you're trying to put these teams in order, you might look at a head-to-head there and say, well, we want to, if they're close enough, keep Tufts ahead of Keene State because they had played head-to-head, and maybe that tells us something. Similarly, Trine and UW-Platteville, they've played head-to-head. Trine got a win there. So that might be something that kind of keeps Trine ahead of UW-Platteville if we think that they're otherwise close. So I did try to go through the list and look at some of those things. I probably didn't capture all of them. We know Case Western and NYU have a season split, so there's probably not to be gained there. We didn't dive in and do a whole bunch of regionally or common opponents comparisons, so we could be missing some things there. But I feel pretty good about this list, and I feel pretty good about the general order of things. I think this is pretty similar to what we might see on Thursday night.
And then just for the sake of completion, like the next 4 on the board there, Rowan, DeSales, Virginia Wesleyan, and Hood. Maybe not a surprise if there are some of those teams that are in the prediction there that drop out. Don't be surprised if maybe one of those 4 become a team that's in as a result.
Yeah, and Rowan, my computer rating that it spits out put Rowan in the top 16. I manually adjusted them down a little bit. For one thing, I don't think that they quite have the regionally ranked win quality that the other teams have. And even though my computer system tries to take that into account, I think the fact that basically everyone else, not exactly everyone else, but most of the other teams have beaten like a number one or a number two team in the region. Rowan hasn't. So when I dropped them out a few spots behind teams that had, they completely fell out. DeSales, I think their strength of schedule is maybe just not going to match up with a team in the top 16. Again, wouldn't be completely floored to see them in, but I think when you're just looking at really strong resumes, like all these teams have, like a 529 SOS is going to stick out on the low side, and that might put you on the downside. And then I think we're getting into teams who really just don't have quite the resume stacking up. Hood has beaten a couple of really top-notch teams. They've beaten Widener, they've beaten Calu, they've beaten Catholic. Those three teams are in here. But 773, 565, those numbers aren't going to stack up super well either. So even though they have some good regionally ranked wins, pretty much all these teams do. So you could see one of those bottom four teams slide in. I'd maybe be least hopeful on Virginia Wesleyan, but they have a really good strength of schedule and again some good wins. I think that those teams will be below the line at the end of the day.
Looking forward to finding out Thursday evening on Hoopsville.
Yeah, Dave always does a good job with all the Hoopsville shows and the top 16 reveals. So I always love tuning in for those, and I can't wait for Luke to be on.
So that's it, Matt. Those are our week 2 regional rankings reactions. Some interesting things. We'll have to see. Going forward, the committee definitely can read into the quality of regionally ranked wins. Maybe they could, maybe they couldn't, maybe they did, maybe they didn't this time around. But that is definitely on the table as we go forward. So looking forward to seeing how this week plays out, getting a new set of winning percentages, strength of schedules, all those things changing by the day, and going through the whole process again for next week.
Yeah, like I said in the episode earlier this week, we're going to get a ton of information. We've got our first ranked order already. We're going to see the top 16 revealed. That's going to put us in a really good headspace of where the committee are valuing the regions against each other, how the tops of the regions stack up, put teams maybe in line for hosting spots. So really big week here. One more week of regional rankings that are public, and then we'll get to tournament selection. So we're getting right down to it. We've had a great year so far. We'd like to thank a lot of people on the screen here that you can see for helping us support our show, support what we do, talk about Division III, support the level. So great job, Dean, to everyone on this list. And Zach, a great job to you for doing this episode.